And we're off. Week number 5. This is our last content-based week where we're going to do a disease or a few diseases and then look at lifestyle ways to approach treatment. Today we're going to talk about aging, our aging bodies, our aging brains, and what is the mind-body connection behind all of it, which is actually pretty cool. A lot of the things that we've heard about, thinking positive, law of attraction, all that stuff, they're finding a biological effect inside of our bodies. So that's really exciting to see the science catch up. We talked about this past week. Hopefully we have another healthy week moving forward and free of illness. Okay, let's talk about our aging brains. There are a lot of diseases that affect our brains as we get older. And even in general, throughout our entire lifespan, there's a lot of things that can happen within our brains, whether it's degeneration of the nerves or whether it's an imbalance like of neurotransmitters. And we're seeing this in a lot of cases grow over time, especially in America. So we're going to talk about dementia and Alzheimer's, anxiety and depression, and brain fog, which is a very general term for just the brain isn't working right. Alzheimer's and dementia, number 6 cause of death. 1 in 3 seniors will die with some form of dementia. The memory loss can be profound, emotional outbursts. It really is profound in the loss of quality life. And the people even around them are affected, family members, friends, they all get to see this process, and it's not a good process. And it's affecting, again, by the time we get older, it's affecting a lot of us. As you can see, by the time, if you make it to 95 years old, you have a 1 in 2 chance of having Alzheimer's. It goes up drastically each decade of life. And now if we look at the projected effects of how many people in the US are going to have Alzheimer's, it has been increasing. By 2050, they project it might be as many as 1 in 5 people will have Alzheimer's. That's a lot of people. Now you could say this could be our population is aging. I think that's a part of it. In general, our population is getting older. But we're also getting less healthy. And our brains are a big part of that. Anxiety and depression. So anxiety is the most common mental illness in America. It affects 1 in 5 people. And major depressive disorder is the leading cause of disability in adults under 45 years old. Quality of life suffers, as does time with family, friends. Same thing with Alzheimer's and dementia. Actually, this is seen a lot in Alzheimer's and dementia, a lot of depression. And this is linked to abnormal levels of neurotransmitters, especially serotonin, but there's a balance of neurotransmitters that have to be there for proper health. And now, one of the issues with this is people see that it's a neurotransmitter issue, and like, okay, well, we need to give you some sort of medication to help that balance of neurotransmitters. Now, the thing is, that could work for some people, but for others, it doesn't work. And there are other ways to influence your neurotransmitter levels, and we'll talk about that. We look at a map of the prevalence of serious psychosocial distress. You can see, first of all, we are leading the pack in the southwest of America. But then we also have a lot of the southern states and southeast. What do we know about those states in general? About their diet and lifestyle and weight. Not good. That's not a healthy area in general. And so I think there is a strong connection. And maybe Arizona, it has to do with the heat. That's what I like to think. That could be, yeah, actually, that could be that they're moving out over here for part of the year. That's a good point. I didn't even think about that. Okay, now you're just standard brain fog, when the brain just isn't working correctly. Difficulty thinking, problem solving, concentrating, poor memory, forgetfulness. This is associated with all sorts of diseases and conditions, and some of them are neurodegenerative, where the nervous system is degenerating or breaking down. Multiple sclerosis, chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia. And this can also link to other chemicals, pharmaceuticals, solvents. There's a lot of causes of brain fog or cognitive dysfunction. And basically, one of the basic causes, the body's out of wellness. Something is happening inside, and the brain is being affected. The nerves are not sending their signals as effectively as they're supposed to. And a lot of times people just chalk this up to old age, just getting older, got an old brain. But it doesn't have to be that way. Actually, I knew a gentleman for a year. For years, I knew this gentleman who he had been slowly deteriorating. He had Alzheimer's. It was getting worse and worse and worse. To the point where he was pretty absent, and him and his wife were selling their assets because he seemed like he was going to die soon. And through diet and some herbal treatments, and really the most thing, he took out a lot of the sugars, all the sugars out of his diet. He made a great recovery where actually we can have a conversation. His eyes are lucid and he remembers things. And Alzheimer's is not something that has a cure. At least, that's the conventional wisdom right now. And to see that type of reversal, it's really exciting that the brain can heal. And sometimes it's not working well, but that it can start to work better. And it doesn't mean that the damage is, sometimes it's just not working well because there's a veil over it in a way. It's just masked from working the way it can. Now, one thing that this is related to, and they're finding more and more connections between the brain and the nerve cells and immune cells. You may have heard of neuroAIDS, where AIDS affects the brain. And AIDS is obviously predominantly an immune system disease, but it has effects on the brain as well. And they're finding receptors that are on immune cells and brain cells. And so we're finding a very strong connection between how the brain functions and how the immune system functions. So that's really promising as well. So what are some risk factors of these cognitive issues? So for mental decline, lack of mental stimulation. What are some things that they say to do to help keep your brain fresh? Puzzles.
Anything like there's a website brain training.
The Lumosity, yeah. The Sudoku puzzles were really big for a few years. Yeah, keep the brain active. Keep it engaged. Basically, if you don't use it, you lose it. That's the essence of it. Sleep disorders. I've actually found that getting inadequate sleep actually leads to inflammation in the brain. Causes inflammation. We talked about inflammation last week and how inflammation over time causes destruction because you get those immune cells that are very messy eaters and they just spill out their digestive contents everywhere and it damages cells. And so if you get that going on in your brain consistently because you're not getting sleep, it's going to cause damage to the brain. Cardiovascular disease, anything that's going to inhibit blood flow to the brain. Again, the brain, just like any other cell, needs blood flow. Use of alcohol or drugs, anything that can damage those cells. Poor health in general, poor diet and lifestyle, and of course, family history. These are all linked to hastened mental decline and a higher risk of that. On the other side, emotional issues, we'll see some similar themes over here, but stress and trauma really taxes our emotional resources. Even if it's trauma from years and years ago, that can still affect us today. Having a low emotional intelligence, we'll talk about that later. But let's face it, emotions and feelings can sometimes be strange. And sometimes we don't always know where they're coming from. And the more you can assess those feelings and understand where they're coming from, is this me, is this something else? We don't have to be a victim of our feelings. Now we can take them and do something positive with them. So we'll do we have a handout on that. Use of alcohol or drugs, again, anything that's damaging the brain can damage our ability to create and process emotions. Poor health, poor diet and lifestyle, family history. Anyone notice diet and lifestyle and the effects on their brain and their emotions? Yeah. I think we all do, right? Exercise. Probably anyone, if you don't exercise for a while, you just don't feel good, you feel off. And then you start exercising, you start to feel good again, you're happy, right? We've all experienced that, right? Same thing with food. Eat some things, a lot of times these are comfort foods that do it. It's a comfort food. You may feel happy in the moment, but then when that passes, you just need another bite of comfort food. But eat a few salads, healthy diet, drink some water, all of a sudden you don't need that comfort food anymore. You feel better. So there definitely is a strong role between that. So take a moment right now, and the first two questions on today's handout, just write down the answers for number 1 and 2 that talk about your brain and any risk factors that you have for any sort of cognitive decline or emotional issues. Okay, let's talk about men's health in our aging male body. Here are some of the common male diseases of aging: ED, or erectile dysfunction and low libido; BPH, or benign prostatic hyperplasia; and prostate cancer. And obviously, prostate cancer, uh, can be deadly, but generally, it's actually pretty slow growing, and usually doesn't have a high metastatic potential. So among cancers, it's not one of the worst. And these other two, they're not going to kill you in and of themselves. But while these are not the most deadly diseases out there, they can really have a strong effect on our mental and emotional state. Um, it's a sign of libido and virility is almost a sign of our manliness and our malehood. And if that stops functioning, we get lower drive. It can affect our hormones, um, or anything in that area that can decrease the quality of life. It can have a strong effect on the way we perceive ourselves and how much enjoyment we get out of life. And especially if there's a hormonal change to go with it, lower testosterone, a lot of times that's accompanied by higher estrogen. A lot of the motivation and drive goes too, and then health in general fades away because there's less drive to exercise, to eat right, to do anything that gives pleasure. And so this can have a really strong effect on our psyche. Any questions or comments about this? We're not going to go into great detail unless you have any. Um,
What is BPH?
it's so BPH, benign prostatic hyperplasia, is when the prostate gets larger. It's an enlarged prostate. And one of the main issues with that is its effect on urination habits. And so men, as they get older, a lot of them start to urinate much more frequently, especially at night. They got to get up to go to the bathroom 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times a night. They may have difficulty starting urination. They might, feel like they're not actually emptying. It affects a lot of the urinary tract, um, and so obviously that can be very upsetting if you're waking up constantly throughout the night and you're getting your sleep disrupted. That has effects throughout the body, and that's something we touched upon in week 2, right? So we're coming back around. Yeah, yeah. BPH, there's a lot of things. One of the things about the prostate gland, it's deep in the pelvis, it doesn't get much circulation. And so if there's any stagnation, or some things that are really bad for the prostate, sitting a lot, um, horseback, even cycling, not the best thing for the prostate because you're sitting, you're not getting much blood flow. And so certain exercises that promote prostate health are swimming, trampoline, even running, anything where you're getting a lot of movement down there in circulation, that will help. There's certain herbs that are really good. Selenium is a great mineral for the prostate. Lycopene, you ever hear of lycopene? Great nutrient. It's a carotenoid. It's in tomatoes, and you want to cook them to liberate and to activate it. So cooked tomatoes are really good. And certain things like green tea and saw palmetto can affect the enzymes that create testosterone and estrogen to maintain balance for that. So there's a lot of things that can be done conservatively. Obviously, it's got to match the severity of the condition. If it's a fast-growing prostate cancer, it would be done it would have to be done in conjunction with conventional treatment. But for things like a BPH, I would think that type of conservative treatment would be very effective. Good question. Some risk factors. Hormonal imbalance. This is a big one. So obviously, it's part of the reproductive tract, and our reproductive tract, just like the female reproductive tract, is sensitive to hormones. That's how it runs and operates. And so a hormone imbalance, and again, as we get older, tends to be decreasing testosterone, and especially if there's weight gain going with that, there'll be some increased estrogen as well. That will affect the overall function of the reproductive tract. And this is also sensitive to diet. Sugar would not help the condition. Cardiovascular disease, you already have an organ that is sensitive to blood flow. If there's cardiovascular disease, then it's getting less blood flow. Actually, erectile dysfunction is one of the first signs of cardiovascular disease in males. Just not getting enough blood to the area. Inactivity, first of all, just for overall health and function of the body. Secondly, because of the circulation issue. Chronic inflammation, oxidative stress, smoking, your normal, just the ones that always show up. The body is in less wellness, it's being damaged, and the male system suffers. So go ahead and now fill out questions number 3 and 4. Okay, so we talked about the bad news. Those are the things that can happen to us as we get older. But as we talked about the past 4 weeks, it doesn't have to go that way. But we're going to talk about what aging is and how we can slow it down, or how we can have it work in our favor instead of beating us down like it does a lot of people. It doesn't have to go that way. I've seen a lot of people in their 50s, 60s, 70s that are feeling better over time. And so we don't have to succumb to our age. What is aging anyway? Well, there's more than one way to define age. Now, most people, and especially since it's quantitative and we live in a data, science-driven culture, we look at the chronological age because we can easily define that. That is based on when you were born and how many calendar days and years you have lived. Problem is that that's not really showing the entire picture. And if you're just going by a number, you might lump yourself with other people that are not of the same health as you. You can look at biological age. Now, a lot of this is based on development, based on biomarkers, what's happening in the body. This is really important for kids to see how they're developing. See how tall they are, how much they weigh, their bone growth. You get to see how they are developing. That's a biological age. And as we know with kids growing up, they'll grow up at vastly different rates. And so in a lot of cases, that's more important than their actual chronological age. Psychological age, experiences, logic, memory, people that are more mature, or people that have wisdom, that's a sign of good psychological age. And then functional age. And we're going to talk about really the last three and how these play a role in your overall quality of life. But the functional age is how do you feel? You can be 20 years old and feel like you're 70, or you can be 70 years old and feel like you're 20. And really, isn't that the most important thing, how you feel? Right? I mean, for me, if I'm 70 feeling 20, I'm going to be very happy with that. And I won't care about the 70 part. And so that's really our main concern is how old do you feel? And this is going to be, it's going to have something to do with the chronological age. But I would submit that it has more to do on the biological age and the psychological age. What's happening inside the body and what's going on inside your brain, your mind, your emotions, and your psyche. That's going to have a bigger effect on how you feel.
You already like test that you can figure out what biological and psychological age.
Yes, I have seen things that propose that they can measure your biological age and functional age. A lot of times it's through like fitness tests to see, like your cardiovascular system, your respiratory system. So that's useful. Basic screening tests can show you stuff as well. And one thing that we're going to go over is an actual marker on the DNA that's linked to how your cells are aging. And that's something that we go through a lab that can offer that, a DNA testing to show your telomere length. So that's exciting. They're getting into deeper and deeper levels. Obviously, all of these, you want to take them in conjunction with everything else, right? No one thing is going to tell the whole story. But you get a whole bunch of these things together, and you get to see a theme. Yeah, really good question. So what are the biological processes of aging? Oxidation is one of the main things. We talked about chronic inflammation. That's a very common disease process. And that actually creates, and we're going to talk about free radicals. Anyone hear of free radicals? All of you, right? Yeah, free radicals. Now the problem is they create oxidation in the body. Do you know any other examples of oxidation?
Rust.
Rust, yes. An apple, when you bite into it and you leave it on the counter, and it starts to get brown, it's oxidizing. Oxidizing is when things break down. And that happens inside our body, especially if we have a lot of free radicals floating around. And we're going to talk about that in link with telomere length. The telomeres, there are those things on the DNA. They're a cap at the end of the DNA so that when our cells multiply and they copy the DNA, there's a little buffer so that they can kind of jump off without missing any genes. Now, every time it makes a copy, it misses a part at the end. And so the telomeres get shorter and shorter. And that is linked with aging. Basically, the shorter your telomeres are, the older you are. And now the thing is, it's not just dependent on how many replications occur. There's actually an enzyme that can help elongate them. And we'll talk about what affects that enzyme. So essentially, when we replicate, we'll end up with a shorter telomere, but that enzyme can replace that end to keep it at its healthy length. So we're getting into places of biology where extending life is becoming more and more of a reality.
There, I just read this the other day. I had never heard of it until 3 years ago. But they were saying that a lobster, when it replicates, does not lose any length in its whole life. It's trying to find out why. And I'm sure y'all die. It doesn't mean the lobster will live forever because they just provide some other. But there was a myth that lobsters, that unless they were captured and eaten by something else, could live forever and ever.
Huh.
Yeah.
That was a myth before they found the telomere discovery?
Well, no, and then they said, compared to a human cell replication, when the telomeres are flipped a little bit each time, and oxygen does not do that.
Interesting.
I'll find it out.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. I think just like a lot of the things we've discussed, telomere is probably one part of the picture. And if we are undergoing a lot of stress, a lot of inflammation, a lot of oxidative stress, the telomeres will be one of many markers that will be affected. And when we go into solutions that will help telomeres, it will likely help a lot of other those markers as well. So that overall, our biological age gets healthier, our functional age gets healthier, and our psychological age gets healthier. Inflammation, advancing diseases. So as we get older, if we have disease processes that go unchecked, they get worse. And our body goes through damage, and our organs don't work as well, and then that just accelerates the process. I don't think that has to happen, but I think that's the tendency that happens, especially if it's not being checked, if it's not being treated. The example is like a car. As your car ages, if you don't take good care of it, it's going to break down. On the other hand, people who take really good care of their cars, they can stretch out the life a really long time and get really good life out of it. So same thing with your body. Difference is your body can self-heal and your car can't. And so there are other factors that make our body even better of a machine than a car. So we talked about stress, nutrition, exercise. How does stress, nutrition, exercise play a role in these processes? Pick any one or all of them. So let's start with stress. How does stress play a role in any one of these processes? Yes, great. The cortisol connection. Cortisol is anti-inflammatory in the short run, but in the long run, it actually increases inflammation in the body when we go through stress over and over again, especially if it's chronic stress or a large amount of stress. Perfect. What about nutrition? What's one way that nutrition affects aging in these processes of aging? Yeah, exactly. So oxidation. We can eat fruits that are loaded with antioxidants and we'll talk about that very briefly, very shortly, that when we have free radicals, the antioxidants from fruits and vegetables can go and basically neutralize them so that they're no longer there. And then what about exercise? What about a disease process that exercise can help? Heart disease, yeah, that's a perfect one. Cardiovascular disease, do some aerobic exercise, do some resistance exercise, and that's really beneficial for heart disease. Absolutely. Within balance, yeah, it does. Yeah, it helps. It'll help protect the body against oxidative stress. It causes some stress on the body, but the overall effect is that the body is healthier from it. Yeah, people who go through, people that exercise a lot every day, they have to be very careful about the oxidative stress that they're putting their body through. The more energy that we produce and utilize, the more oxygen that we need to take in our body to do that, and that creates free radicals. So that's the downside, but the good side is our immune system, if we're not overtraining, is more prepared to actually quench those free radicals because we make antioxidants in our body, and that happens with the immune system. Good questions. Speaking of oxidative stress, so what happens? Basically what happens is you end up with this ion. An ion is just a charged particle or molecule or atom, and it's looking for electrons. It's starving for electrons. And if you remember way back in chemistry when they talked about electronegativity, oxygen is the second to most electronegative, which means it loves electrons. It wants them badly. And so especially when you have oxygen and it becomes a free radical, or anything that becomes a free radical, it is going to grab electrons from wherever it can find it. And those could be cell membranes, they can be proteins, could be our DNA. Now the thing about the free radical process is it's a chain reaction. If a free radical steals an electron from your DNA, It may be happy now that it has its electron, so it's okay. But now the part of your DNA, now that's a free radical, and it's looking for an electron. And it's just an out of control process of damage, and it just keeps going until something, an antioxidant, comes around and stops the process. And so the antioxidant has an extra electron that it can donate without becoming a free radical itself. And we have antioxidants in the body. One of them is glutathione. Anyone hear of glutathione? It's a small protein. It's made from a few amino acids, but cysteine is one of them. So people who take N-acetylcysteine as a supplement, have you heard of that? It's good for some people for oxidation or any type of inflammation, especially lungs, liver. But that helps replenish glutathione, which is our natural, one of our powerful natural antioxidants. What are some other antioxidants? Yeah, well, vitamin C is a really powerful one. Vitamin E, especially for the brain. Resveratrol, good. Yeah, and a lot of your berries will be very high in antioxidants, while they're good for the cardiovascular system. Yeah, those are, you have your bioflavonoids and anthocyanidins and all these colorful pigment molecules. Those can act as antioxidants. There's really a lot of them. That's why it's so good to eat your fruits and veggies. Now, where does oxidation come from? So many places. It can come from the sun. It can come from pollution. It can come from stress. It can come from smoking. It can come from someone else smoking. There are really, I mean, the world around us creates oxidation. We just have oxidation all around us and inside of us. And so our job is to manage the oxidation as best we can. So we talked about the telomeres. The telomeres are those protective tips at the end of the chromosomes of our DNA. And they decrease in length and number as we age. And that enzyme I was talking about was telomerase. This regenerates telomeres when DNA makes its copies. So we have a function that can actually regenerate these telomeres. Now so let's talk about stress and the mind-body element. So we have some stress, and this can come from external stress or internal stress. If you're grumpy, if you have a negative mindset, those are also psychosocial stressors. We have chemicals released in the body, our norepinephrine, which is our adrenaline, and cortisol, right? We talked about those week 2. These will attach to receptors on the cells, and they decrease DNA repair and decrease telomerase activity. And this has been shown. And so what happens? You get shorter telomeres, you get oxidative damage, decrease antioxidant production, and then at the end of it we have cellular aging and tissue, organ, and organ system dysfunction. So they have uncovered finally the mechanisms and the enzymes that play a role in us aging only based on what goes on in our brain. And so we've effectively shattered that dichotomy of mind and body as if they're two separate things. They're not. They are really one and the same because they affect each other so much. Okay, take some time to do do number 5 and just think about what do you think your age is? Your chronological age, your psychological age, and your functional age. Who do we come up with? Obviously, there's some disparities, right? They weren't all the same age.
45 for my chronological age, 35 for my psychological, and 25 for my.
Excellent. What do we think about the? Does anyone else want to share theirs? Yeah.
Go ahead.
I went 47 for chronological, 40 for psychological, and 47 for functional.
Okay.
I'm gonna feel my age, but I'd love to feel younger.
Okay. How are you? How have you been trending? Are you trending for the functional age?
I've been wanting to trend down.
Okay.
Lately, since I've been taking these courses in the last 3 weeks or so, I'm getting on a pretty good routine. Half an hour every day.
Perfect.
That's kind of stepping up.
Excellent.
Feeling better and looking cardio in. I started doing some free weights and some strength training too, which is kind of working out.
Great.
So, yeah, and I've been eating really good. So, I'm finding, with the sleep and the discipline, like the discipline has been my hardest element to keep.
Mm.
To go sort of on, but at the same time, getting enough sleep, all that. I'm finding it's really difficult. Something always has to give. It's pushing back my sleep is what's tends to give. If I'm not exercising, spending time with family, or eating right, controlling my workload, something pushes and it's usually the sleep gets flushed back down from the life.
Yeah.
But it's a challenge to maintain all that. I've got a pretty regular schedule.
Mhm.
It's just not as disciplined as I'd like to be. And I've never had that kind of that. Kind of ride as best as I can.
Right. Go with the flow.
That's what I'm trying to see moves. I think I'm focused on it.
Right.
Anyway.
Well, that's good awareness.
The discipline thing is it's high on my list. It's not on my list.
And a lot of people struggle with that, and especially the sleep, like you're talking about. Sleep sometimes is the easiest to sacrifice, even if it's not good for our overall health, or we may not enjoy it. It's easier to give that up than work family. But yeah, like you said, you're trending in the right direction, so that's very promising.
Yeah, it feels good. I mean, I feel pretty good healthy life. I just I know I gotta drop some weight. I'm probably 20, 30 pounds heavier than I want to be.
Yeah.
My age is 33. I'm a psychological age is 40, and functional age is
46, 70, and I feel 46.
Okay.
So maybe I feel like I'm in my 30s anymore.
Right. Yeah. You notice the difference getting into your 40s. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a good thing that 70 isn't the functional age, right?
Yep.
So, what do we think about these psychological age? We saw a big difference between some people were quite a bit younger, some people quite a bit older. What's our thoughts on that, on the psychological age? Is it better younger or older? Or is there better?
I think I'm just more self-aware than I was. I understand why I feel a certain way now than I used to.
Yeah.
And that was knowing that.
Right.
Kind of listen to what's going on before you act.
Better self-awareness, better self-control.
Yep.
Excellent. Anything to add to that? So what was your take?
I put a younger age because I know that I've gathered wisdom along the way, but I also feel like I'm trying to get mature. Yeah, just because probably a lot of that has to do with the fact that I've no kids and had that whole part of my life that a lot of other people might even have. So I just still feel like I didn't. I moved to Massachusetts and came here and I'm here and
So young at heart.
yeah.
Yeah.
I would agree with that kind of thing. I feel young in mind and heart, because I tend to be silly and goofy and not as structured as I'd like to be because I was young.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what helps me. One of the times that I do have,
The
Yeah.
That's why I put it together.
Yeah.
I don't know, try it around. I've always preferred, and my closest friends, people I enjoy talking with the most are 70+ years old. I have very few, even associates that I deal with that are my own age or younger. None that are younger.
Has this been a common thing where you usually resonate with the people older than you? Yeah. And so, it's really interesting to see because when I first looked at it too, I thought, well, is it better to be a young age or an older age? I can see on one side you're maybe more wise, more experienced, more mature. On the other side, maybe more playful, more fun. You get to laugh more. And so, is one good and the other not? I don't think so. I think it depends on how you look at it. And probably the best is to have both, to still have that young playfulness, curiousness, lightness with us, but also the experience, the self-awareness, the self-control, and the things that go with getting smarter, gaining experience, things like that. I think it's good to have both. And to have just one or the other can lead to problems. If it's all play, all fun, no self-awareness, those are things that obviously that can lead to problems. But if it's all work and no play, that also can build up with stress and decrease the amount of enjoyment we have in our lives. So I'm glad that we got to see both sides of it because I agree. I think it's tough to pick one or the other. And that's going to segue into the last segment of this, as far as our psyche, our emotions, our mental state. How do we feel? Are we getting older inside or younger inside? And in what way? Is it benefiting us or not? And this I thought was pretty interesting. A lot of people they look forward to retirement. They think, oh, I just got to put in another 10 years, another 5 years, another 2 years, and I can finally retire. But they're finding that retirement is one of the unhealthiest things for us. First of all, it's a really stressful event. If you remember week 2, we did the stress, the list of stressful events. Retirement is towards the top 10 of the most stressful things that can happen to you is retiring. And there's a lot of anecdotal evidence and stories that people that when they retire, their health declines very rapidly after that. And you would think that should be the time where you get to enjoy yourself. You have no stress. You can be doing anything you want, and the body declines. So what's happening? It's very stressful for the body. Other things that could be happening. There's less eustress in the life. Remember what eustress is? We talked about distress and eustress. Distress is the stress that causes damage. It's when we're overly stressed, long-term stress. Eustress is stress that actually benefits the body. Exercise is a perfect example. Or gravity. When astronauts go in space, their skeletal system weakens because there's no gravity pulling down on the bones. And so we need a certain amount of stress to be healthy. Otherwise, there's no reason to adapt or grow strong. And so if you retire, and as my late uncle used to say, he just sat around and played cards all day. In his life, he didn't have much fulfillment. It was pretty boring for him. And so his health started to decline very rapidly because there was nothing pushing him. And so less eustress because there's without the job. And some people don't pick up other habits or other things that they do, other hobbies, to replace it. They just end up with nothing. Loss of friends, all the people you work with, the people that you thought you hated, and then all of a sudden you miss them when you're gone. And loss of purpose, especially people who really identify with their job, they have an important position. Very common for CEOs that they are defined as the head honcho, and everyone has to answer to them. And then they retire, and they're just Joe Schmo, hanging out at the golf course, and they feel like now they've lost their identity. They feel like a nobody. And this has a very strong correlation also with male issues, virility issues, impotence. We identify with certain things, and then we start to lose that identity, and it can be very damaging to our psyche and to our emotions. So, retirement. Looking forward to retirement. If you're enjoying the present and you have a healthy outlook, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're working really hard and just thinking, well, when I retire, I'll be happy, the facts say that that may not be the case. You may think you will be, but not necessarily. So what's the trick? And where do you want to live? And I don't want to sound like a motivational speaker, but really, you have to decide now. You get to make your life right now. So do you want to be cranky pants on the left, who's waiting for happy things to happen to them, but has a negative mindset about everything that comes their way? Or do you want to have happy thoughts, where that you get to color the things that happen around you and your experiences in a bright light, where that no matter what comes your way, you have a positive response to it, or at least a response that will not lead to too much stress in the body. Because when we talked about stress, it's not the stressful event that affects the body. It's our effect, our response to the stress. And so if somebody says something to us that may sound condescending, let's say, it's our response to those words that affect our internal state. We can shrug it off. We can communicate our interpretation of it in a rational, logical way. We can bottle it up and get frustrated. We can fly off the handle and start a fight. There's a lot of different ways to approach situations. And so that's where we really are not, we're not a victim of our circumstances. And that affects our health. So cranky pants, they will have increased emotional stressors, and that, as we showed, can accelerate aging. Older faster. Emotional disturbances are a keystone of Alzheimer's and dementia. It's not just forgetfulness, it's the emotional lability. They might be okay one moment and then they're really angry the next moment. And then they're wildly depressed the next moment. It's all over the place. And emotional problems, let's face it, decrease the quality of life. I mean, that's a no-brainer. If you're not happy, your life is nowhere near as enjoyable as if you are happy. On the other side, with happy thoughts, a positive outlook enhances the regeneration processes in your body, helps your body repair itself. Happy thoughts are linked with decreased pain. Decreased pain sensitivity, increased pain tolerance. And that may be, we talked about the link between pain and serotonin. Serotonin in the brain sends signals down the spinal cord to lessen pain signals. And so if you're happy, that boosts your serotonin levels, you have more, that can decrease pain. That's the way I look at it. And let's face it, uplifting emotions make my life more enjoyable. Take a moment to answer questions 6 and 7. 6, 7, and 8. 6, 7, and 8. Now, you don't have to give specific examples, but what did you notice about, first of all, did anyone have all positive, uplifting, and optimistic attitude? Does anyone always have that in all aspects of their life?
Not always, but I think I'm 90%.
Okay. Yeah, so not always, but skewed in that direction. Now, what do we think about that? Does that sound reasonable? Is that kind of where we all fall? More towards the, yeah, and wouldn't you say that's a pretty healthy thing? Healthier to be skewed in that direction. Do we want to be 100% in that direction and always be, rose-colored glasses? Not necessarily. Um, you know, uh, Sometimes it's healthy to be slightly pessimistic or skeptical or just see that side of things. It can be healthy for us. Again, it's just like stress. stress is not inherently bad. Seeing the dark side of things is not always bad, but it's where are you spending most of your time. Now, what may have come up in these are that maybe in one aspect of your life or a couple aspects, those areas may be predominantly more pessimistic, or at least have a larger share of pessimism. Maybe some people are more pessimistic about their health or about their work. They love spending time with their friends and family, but then when they're at work with their colleagues, then they're complaining and they're really pessimistic about the outcome. Now, what is the benefit of being able to identify that?
Not going to do something about it.
Yeah, you can address the issues. Exactly. The first step is awareness. If you see, okay, this is one area I'm generally optimistic, but in this area, I'm not, and that's taking away from my natural state. So what can I do about it? Because I think we're all, most of us, I think, are naturally optimistic. Some people don't seem to be, but I think in general, most people want to be in a happy state. But it may be certain circumstances that allow us to go away from that, and then sometimes it starts to pull us in that direction. And so being aware of people, places, stimuli, experiences that can pull us out of a positive mindset can help us be aware of what do we do about that and how do we approach it. Awesome. So now let's talk about meditation and aging. We talked about meditation week 2 because I wanted to plant the seed, and now we're coming back to it because I want to remind you about meditation because it can be very powerful. And a lot of people do shy away from it, but then when people do it, most people think if they do the right meditation, they start to realize the benefits. And it can be very captivating, the feeling that you can experience. So how does it play a role in aging? And this is from an experimental study. So oxidative stress may be an important mediator between stress and disease. It is linked to cardiovascular disease as well as telomere shortening. We'll talk about that. Although few studies have examined oxidative stress balance, 2 initial studies found that meditation practitioners of transcendental meditation and Zen had lower levels of a marker of oxidative stress, which is the good for oxidation. And so just by meditating, deep breaths, relaxation, they were able to lower markers actually in their body that were showing lower amounts of oxidative stress. And so what is the mechanism on telomerase activity? We talked about mindfulness. Mindfulness, so transcendental meditation is a type of meditation where, if you remember, you repeat a mantra or a sound over and over again, and that's what you focus on. And all those other thoughts kind of go away. Mindfulness is slightly different. Instead of focusing on one thing, you more take a back seat. You just observe all the things that come into your mind. Thoughts, sounds, experiences, things that just pop in. And you're just aware of them. You're watching them like you would watch a TV. And you don't think about any of them. Both are used by people to great benefit. It just depends on which one that you resonate with. And so mindfulness leads to positive cognitive states, metacognition, being able to that kind of self-awareness, perceive control, being able to be empowered in the things that go on around you, and challenge appraisals, seeing things as challenges that could be exciting to overcome rather than things that are negatives or obstacles that are just bringing you down, right? It's just that mindset between whether this is a positive challenge or a negative blockage. This leads to positive arousal. This is a eustress. Gets us in that awake, alive, ready to attack the world feeling in a positive way. This leads to increased androgens, the gonadal hypothalamus and growth hormone, and vagal tone. The vagus nerve helps help us feel relaxed and promotes visceral blood flow, good digestion, good organ health. So that is one of the ways that mindfulness can help you. And again, we already talked about the role with telomere activities. Stress cognitions, threat appraisals and rumination, so seeing everything as a threat and then thinking about it over and over and over again. Yeah, and then stress arousal, high cortisol and insulin and oxidative stress. That's the red side. And that's where you get the decreased telomerase activity and telomere shortening. And where does it start, these things? At least this pathway starts right up here, in between the ears. Just the way we perceive the world around us and our approach to it. So this is the power of the so-called mind-body medicine and mind-body therapies. This is how the mind can heal the body. Now, in all cases, no, but it helps. In some cases, it is the primary factor. In other times, it helps the process along, or it just increases quality of life. Either way, it's a win scenario. Talked about meditation, affirmations. Anyone have experience with affirmations? Care to share your experience with them?
Well, I'm a big believer in the law of attraction. What you put out is what you get back, and take a positive and positive things, and even with body positive. So he described like disease perfectly. He said it's disease, and it's a body without ease.
Mm-hmm.
And the more at ease and positive you are, the less disease or infection.
Yeah, and affirmations is one way to just get that alignment and get that belief in place.
Just kind of knowing what you want and eliminating, can'ts and don'ts.
Mm-hmm.
I think your vocabulary, because your brain doesn't process can'ts and don'ts apparently. Like you say, I don't want this to happen, your brain thinks, all it's focused on is the action of the can'ts and don'ts.
Yeah. If I said don't think of an elephant's going to pop in your mind because the neural net, the neurons for elephant are going to fire. And so it just reforms that pathway exactly. And so reforming and retraining our mind to think a certain way, I think it works on many levels. When we talk about law of attraction, there's a lot of different levels. But if you just look at the brain level, our brain is controlling every part of our body in some way. And so whatever's going on in the brain, and especially if there's a belief, the brain is going to carry out that belief. So people who, we talked about that with pain, and the guy who was hiking, he got a little nick, woke up at the hospital, and he happened to be bit by a really poisonous snake, venomous snake, and then he felt a nick after that a few years later, and then he was down, writhing in pain, but it was just a twig. The brain created that, and the brain is going to do its job, whether or not it is serving us in the long run or not. It's going to do the best it can. And especially if we have a belief or that we really think this is going to happen, our brain is going to work really hard to make that happen. And that's where affirmations can play a role.
I guess that's more like visualizations than affirmations.
They're a little bit of both, yeah. I think they go hand in hand. And the visualizations generally add maybe a couple more senses, and the affirmations are more the words that can elicit those. So I think they are really related.
It's like positive reinforcement.
Yeah.
Of things and being an awareness of your belief systems.
Yeah.
I'm reading a real short book and I can't put it down and I don't want to give it to a couple of people, but I keep reading it over and over again. So I can't let it go, but it's called The Truth About Stress. And it's like you can't control the actions that happen in the present, you can't control the outcome.
Yeah.
The key to the whole point is it's not your reaction to the event, it's the belief system that your mind goes through before you release your action. And it's about recognizing your belief system and your I don't know what you call it, your morals and your rose-colored lens that you see things through.
Yeah.
And you have to change your beliefs in order to change your actions.
Yeah.
So your actions will still happen, but if you don't recognize what those beliefs are and how you're looking at each event, you don't look at that and you can never change the outcome. And that's what works wonders for me. I mean, I've been reading this book for probably 6 months, and it's like
That's the sign of a great book.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, he uses a lot of real life, if you know how to get around these beats, he uses a lot of real life experiences with people that have come to him saying, I'm looking at my road, and stuff. 9 times out of 10, he just lets them keep talking and they answer themselves.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's pretty cool to hear that. But, yeah, that key thing about recognizing your beliefs before you act is really, really cool to control your stresses. Because the outcome is positive stress versus negative stress.
Exactly, and that's exactly what that's showing. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's and like you said, the action is kind of like a symptom. It's a symptom of what's going on underneath, because that action came out of a certain belief and a certain perception of what occurred. And so the action can help show you what that belief is, what that perception was. But without addressing it and only dealing with the action, it's just dealing with the symptoms. It's just masking the symptoms without looking at the root cause. So that is a great approach to it. Is yeah, what is the belief system underneath that led to the action? Absolutely. Gratitude, visualizations. These are all different tools, but in the same vein, really. It's about getting the mind and body into a state where it's happy, where it's positive. It's focusing on the things that are there. It's focusing on the things that you want. Because a lot of times, I think about it even in schooling. What's the biggest mark is going to be X's for things that we get wrong, right? In a lot of ways, we're trained to focus on the negative and things that we lack, whereas these are retraining us to focus on the things that we have, to focus on the things that we're getting, and focus on the positive aspects, because that just leads to more of that and just a more uplifting state. Did I say something that triggered you?
Yeah, it's just this was with my wife. It's like we've walked through neighborhoods before and walked through a neighborhood, and at the end of the walk, she'll tell me about all the yards that she didn't like. And it's like, where's the one that you did? And it's so unusual to have somebody be able to finish something like that and look for the one positive. What's the one thing I really liked about that?
Yeah.
Or that I'm going to focus on? And it's so easy to come up with, I did like this, and this.
Yeah. It's how our society is, and it's prevalent. And so that's why we need to do work to do these things to train that muscle, which is really underused for most people. And a lot of it's just our culture. But yeah, it could be a practice where it's just, okay, well, what about the things that were there? And yeah, it can be a shift in perspective, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. That's interesting. Okay, emotional healing and processing. Things from our past, whether they're 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, can still affect us in the present. Our body is meant to survive. And things that happen to us in the past, especially in our formative years when we're kids, can lead to belief systems which are just mental adaptations to our world. And a lot of our belief systems that we develop when we're kids are when we are smaller. We're not as physically gifted, we're not as mentally capable, and so we have to form these adaptations to deal with the fact that we're not ready adults. But the thing is, we carry on, unless we consciously kind of let go of them and see them, we can carry on those adaptations well into adulthood when we don't need them anymore. And so even if it's like, okay, I've gotten past it, it doesn't bother me anymore, you still may have carried along that belief system as an adaptation. And so this is where you can do work, journaling, meditation can help with things like this. Meditation, when your mind goes quiet, these epiphanies can come forward and can really be, changing mentally. Or maybe even seeing a professional, seeing someone who can help you navigate these experiences and how they could be affecting you now based on actions or beliefs that are currently there. This is definitely one that a lot of times isn't really explored, especially by men. You know, we don't like to always think about ourselves as emotional creatures, but we are. It's just really our nature, and this can help uncover some of the belief systems that are there and operating. And then to just retrain the brain, two ways: biofeedback and neurofeedback. It's a way to work out the brain just like you would any muscle. And there are really cool things. Neurofeedback is really good for people that have certain persistent mindsets. It could be inattention, it could be apathy, it could be hyperactivity. There's a lot of things, but it can help focus and train the brain. And biofeedback can be used. It's similar, but it's using the brain to affect physical physiology. And they could do things for like pain. Biofeedback can be really useful for. And really, what it is, it's using devices, and they hook it up to your skull to measure activity and for the neurofeedback, and then they could also measure things like pulse and like sweating of the skin to measure how your body's responding, and then walk you through exercises to actually modulate your response. So there's really cool ways to do it, and it's kind of like a beefed up version of meditation visualizations, which you can do on your own. But this uses really cool tools and techniques and a practitioner along that with you. So that's really exciting for the mind-body medicine. Any question on these? Anyone ever try biofeedback or neurofeedback? Anyone ever heard of it before today? Yeah, it's neurofeedback's pretty wild. They actually measure your brain waves and see which ones are predominant and where they are predominant, and then they can do certain things. And usually, it's some sort of there'll be a screen and like some sort of computer program where they have you focus on certain things, and it affects your brain waves, and then they can measure what's happening to your brain waves to track your progress.
So do they like put like different stimulus and track your reactions there?
So one example, so I'll give you a biofeedback example, is they would have you, they measure the temperature of your finger, and they would have you warm your finger up. And then you would see on the screen the temperature rising. It might fall and it might rise. And the physiology behind it is when you focus on an area, you get blood flow there. The blood goes to that area. And so if you start to see it go down, then it kind of cues you to put your awareness back there. Another example, it would be neurofeedback. And there's different games where that's based on, so when you concentrate, it will affect certain brain waves. When the game measures those brain waves, it could do something like, maybe you're focusing on getting this wheel to spin faster. And so when you focus on it, it'll start spinning faster. And it's because it's measuring your brain waves. But to you, it seems like with your mind, you're making this thing spin, which in a sense you are. But it creates that type of feedback where that you can see when you are achieving the desired results. Yeah, it's really wild.
I think it was a psychologist hooked machines up to Olympic athletes, I think in the 80s, and they visualized their race in their head, and they put sensors all over it, just visualizing their race, all the muscles that they would normally use fired in the same sequences and timing that they would if they were running a race.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's different, but it's just interesting.
Yeah, it's different, but in a way, it's when we think about things, it's the same as doing it in our brain. And so it's even a great way to prepare. I mean, all the best athletes do some sort of visualization. Golfers are big with this, you know.
By over air control helicopters that are going ahead now too.
Just from
Yeah.
interesting.
I've seen videos of it. I'm skeptical. I could probably not make that. And they're not expensive either.
So you're like, oh, look, squirrel.
Yeah. They're just the little ones,
I've done a couple of things in my life with mental focus. One of them was a young guy in my life at work, and he was always trying to find a way to be successful and stuff. And he had a video that was called The Secret of the Power of Focus. You could do anything you want, and that was the focus.
Yeah.
And when you look at some of the most successful people, they always talk about their focus. They actually have to achieve.
Yeah.
And that was one thing. And then I did some leadership, personal development training, and it was a real strange process. From 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. theory in the companies that we have, as a gesture, like 30-40% of the company that do the process. They've had exercises there where they can focus on some of the activities where walking about a very foot in the top hole in the bare feet. When you have to be focused to do it, number one is breaking boards, doing instruction, focusing on why you do it.
Yeah.
It was pretty cool, but it was extreme mental concentration type of stuff.
Sure.
It was kind of neat.
It's-
Let's sort of throw that out there, but it seems these things are going to be focuses for that.
Absolutely. And we all, I mean, most of us focus on something. It's just what are we focusing on? Are we focusing on what we want? Are we focusing on the things that we don't want, or the things that we don't like? And I think that's a major difference. That some people find a way, against all odds, to focus on the things they want. And I think it's even better that way. I mean, would you rather spend all of your mental time replaying things that you don't like, or replaying things that, even if they don't exist yet, would be awesome? It's just a better headspace to be in. But yeah, focus and the mental, that's part of the mind-body connection. So important. Absolutely. So just to close, we all know this. I mean, we all age. We're all getting older. We all have an expiration date on this earth. So enjoy the time you have. Happy hobbies. Do things that you enjoy doing. It's really good for the health. Positive mindset. Obviously, spend time with friends and family. When people are on their deathbed, what do you regret? That's usually the one. I wish I enjoyed myself more. I wish I spent more time with friends and family. Wish I had better hobbies. Most people won't say, I wish I had worked longer hours. Wish I had gotten less sleep. And, let yourself have fun. Because as we talked about, it is good for the health. It's good for your health. It's good for your biological aging process. And one thing, don't fall into the trap of working so hard for your future that you destroy your future health in the process. You want to be able to enjoy it when you get there. And it's really about balance, I believe. Okay, take a moment to set your goal for this final week. What do you want to do? And I encourage you to make it maybe something about belief systems or mindsets or visualizations, meditation, something that you'd like to do and that you think you can achieve in this week. Maybe you meditate for 5 minutes 3 times in the next week.
Another thing I'd like to add on that, as far as don't destroy your future when you're at it, is that I find it's more about enjoying the path along the way a lot more than focusing on the end goal. The end goal in mind, like the Covey saying says, I'm sure you're enjoying the path along the way.
That doesn't look like a 40 psychological
I
age.
know. I've had some gaps in my life where I missed giant chunks of it for like working hard, digging out holes, trying to advance myself.
Yeah.
Grow in areas that I look back on and I missed 2 years. Traveling on the road.
Yeah, and like you said, it's good to have that end goal and to have those achievements, but those can't be everything because those are short-lived.
Yeah.
And the process, the journey it's always going to be there. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and the achievements don't seem to really. Yeah. looking forward sometimes, I think the achievements and the goals are very appealing, and that becomes a primary focus. But then looking backwards, we tend not to see those as much as we do just kind of our overall life and just the journey that it took to get to where we are at. We see things differently, and priorities and what matters changes depending on where we look. That could be a good goal. Spending 10 minutes outside and just looking around and just observing nature, just being there. Yeah, just being present and not thinking about anything you got to do and just enjoying the fact that you're alive and breathing. Yeah, that's a really good exercise. Awesome. So to summarize, we talked about some really good stuff today. Aging is a process. There's different ways to define it, but regardless, aging is something that we all go through. But it doesn't have to be a bad thing. It doesn't have to define us or put us along a certain path. We can define it. We can age gracefully. We can age happily. And we can enjoy the journey the entire way. And it really is up to us. And when we do enjoy ourselves, and we have a positive mindset, and we see things as positive challenges and not negative threats, and we have that mindset that is optimistic, it helps us age slower. It helps us enjoy ourselves and increase our quality of life. And so, if there's anything that's blocking us, any belief system, any old habit, any old tape that we're playing, we can replace that with something that's more fulfilling. And we can do that at any age. And that can help us feel better, live longer, live healthier. So what extra resources do we have for this week? One thing that isn't listed, but we have the Emotional Intelligence Questionnaire. So we talked about emotional intelligence and its role in our quality of life and our health. And this one's interesting because you have two people answer. You answer on one side, and then you have someone else who knows you answer, and to see if they, how much there's agreement between the way you see yourself and the way someone close to you sees you. And then basically you want to see a lot of yeses. If you answer no somewhere, that could be one place of your life that may be holding you back emotionally and could be affecting your quality of life in a negative way. And so another really good reflective activity. We talked about oxidation. We have the top 20 antioxidant-packed foods. Berries are mentioned, but if you see beans come up a lot too. Beans are also really high in antioxidants. And we also have, well, it's not on this one, but dark chocolate has a lot of antioxidants, so a lot of tasty foods here in general. It's from chickpeas. So let's see. It's not on this list, and if you notice, a lot of these, they're very colorful, but they don't have to be necessarily really colorful. But yeah, I'm sure that has a fair amount of antioxidants. It's got protein. Yeah, it'll help stabilize the blood sugar, which is really good for the brain. We also have a good article on 10 ways to enhance your emotional intelligence. Things like don't judge too quick or edit your feelings too quickly. You want to process them, see if you can find connections between your feelings and other times you felt the same way. A lot of stuff we've been talking about that self-awareness, really understanding where these feelings are coming from, what beliefs are underneath it, what habits are underneath it, rather than just trying to modulate and stop the feeling or stop the action. And then something called the quick coherence technique. There's a really cool company called the Heart Math Institute, and it has something that's like a biofeedback. They have a device where you can hook it up, it can read your pulse through your ear or on your finger, and it tells you when to breathe in and when to breathe out. And if you pace it with that light that goes up and down, it measures your heart rate, because your heart rate and your respiration rate when you're relaxed will start to sync up. And that's very powerful physiologically. A lot of times, especially if we're stressed and our breathing pattern is erratic, our heart rate becomes, it doesn't have the same variability, it becomes very wobbly. Whereas the heart rate variability is how much the heart rate changes from when you inhale and exhale. the more that variability, the healthier you are. And so if we're stressed and not breathing deeply, it kind of does this type of thing. Whereas if we are relaxed and we have a sync breathing and heart rate, it does this, where our heart rate goes up and then it goes down and then it goes up and it goes down. It's very rhythmic. It's very healthy. Very good for the cardiovascular system, the nervous system, the mind, and the emotions. And what's really cool is that this device can measure that coherence. It can measure your heart rate variability. And then you can see, it gives you feedback there with the sound, but also you can plug it into a computer and download the data and see how you did and what your variability was. So you get your own feedback device. They range in prices, and sometimes you can find deals. I got an old version for 100, and they go up to like 200 or 220. But you can find them on sale. But they are, man, I'll have to look that up for next time. It's blank. M-Wave, EM Wave, M-Wave 2 is the new one. I have the one. And you can either get the device or you can get the reader and plug it into your phone. There's an app that you can get on your phone that will track it and show you the data. So really cool stuff, especially for people who are new to meditation or relaxation exercises, and your mind might be wandering and you don't know if you're doing it right. This will give you real-time, in-time feedback and kind of just coach you on how to breathe and how to relax. And I had the old version, but it worked beautifully. You'll feel in seconds, if not minutes, or minutes, if not seconds, that it's working. So that's really cool. But this quick coherence technique is from that company that makes that device, the HeartMath Institute, and they have a lot of breathing and stress reduction techniques and a lot of research and articles on the effects of heart rate variability in our breathing on our health, longevity, and attitude. So really cool. HeartMath, I have the website there. Pretty cool to check out. And this is one example. It's basically just deep breathing, and then you add potency and power by thinking of something that makes you happy. Positive experience in the past or something you're looking forward to. It's a great way to break up the day if you're kind of dragging, especially after lunch. Do some of the breathing, think about some positive stuff, you can regain your energy.
I can't remember where I found it. I found one breathing exercise a while back that helps like anxiety and stress. And it was 5-2-10. What it does, you inhale for 5 seconds, hold it for 2, then exhale and you get
Oh, okay.
and it's helped me out a lot. It's helped me anxiety a little bit. And it's helped that I need to just kind of de-stress or just kind of helps.
Yeah, that's, it's funny because so there's different timings for inhale, exhale, and then you may throw in some of the pausing in between. Now it seems like, because I've seen it, I usually see it the other way, where that it's longer for the inhale and quicker for the exhale. But it seems like
You hold it for 2 and slowly exhale.
yeah, and I think the exhale is a way of either slowing you down or speeding you up if it goes out quicker.
Yeah.
So if there's a depression or an apathy or a fatigue, I think exhaling quicker would probably enliven you, and that's actually been my experience. And probably why they have you stretch it out is with an anxiety, you tend to want to slow things down, not speed them up.
So when you're running long distances, you do long inhales and get the air out as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff, and the good thing about the breathing is it's free. We have oxygen all around us, and breathing doesn't cost us anything, but just a little bit of energy. And so it's free. Surgeries aren't, pharmaceuticals aren't, supplements aren't, food isn't. Breathing is free. So it's a really cool way to aid our health. Next week we have the finale, the grand finale. So that's going to be our 6th week of talking about wellness and setting goals each week and how to make incremental change. And this will be our last week for this program. And so looking forward, what to do to kind of maintain the momentum that you have from this. And even just looking as far as health milestones, making sure that you're seeing the professionals that you should see, getting the screening tests that are appropriate, and just how to maintain this in the long run. And so we're going to talk about that and the elements that go into keeping that momentum. So I look forward to seeing you guys there. Any questions or comments before we get there? Awesome. All right, have a great week.
Thank you.